The desert sun had long since passed its zenith when Sergeant Daniel Rains arrived at the gates of Al-Nur Palace, a sprawling fortress of sandstone and silence tucked deep within the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter. The American soldier adjusted his collar and looked out at the expansive dunes surrounding the complex, shimmering beneath a sweltering Arabian sky. It had taken 3 helicopters, 2 heavily armored convoys, and a week of tightly monitored diplomatic clearance for him to be standing here. But none of that weighed as heavily on his shoulders as the photograph folded in his wallet, his daughter Lily, smiling from behind her chipped front tooth, her golden hair tangled from the California breeze. That little girl was his world, and the only reason he was here at all. Because Daniel wasn't just a soldier on foreign soil. He was a father, a widower, and a man who had promised his daughter that he would return, not just alive, but changed. He had not expected this mission to be so personal. And he had not expected to be summoned by Sheikh Omar bin al-Hadi himself. Inside the palace, time seemed to slow. Every hallway whispered with echoes of ancient lineage and diplomatic precision. The walls bore intricate carvings of calligraphy, Quranic verses and proverbs etched into the stone with the care of generations. A scent of oud wood lingered in the air, clinging to the folds of Daniel's uniform. Servants in flowing white robes passed by without a sound, their eyes cast down in reverence. He was led through a series of arches and corridors until he entered a grand hall unlike anything he'd ever seen. Towering marble columns stretched toward a domed ceiling adorned with mosaic tiles and patterns so complex that staring at them too long made one feel like drifting into a trance. Along the perimeter sat nearly 24 men, dignitaries, and tribal leaders. Each dressed in immaculately pressed thobs and keffiyehs, some adorned with golden agals and family emblems stitched into the hem. They sat in silence, forming a semicircle around a central seat, a throne-like chair of dark cedar inlaid with ivory and resting atop a raised platform. And there, seated with the poise of someone who carried not only power but heritage, was Sheikh Omar. Daniel had read the file. Sheikh Omar was not a warlord, nor merely a political leader. He was a scholar, a philosopher, a tribal patriarch, and in recent years, a crucial bridge between East and West. In matters of diplomacy, his word carried weight across continents. He was known to be gracious, but exacting. Fluent in 6 languages, including classical Arabic, Farsi, French, and English. And yet, Daniel could not shake the feeling that he was being led not into a diplomatic meeting, but a trial. The silence grew heavier as Daniel stepped onto the marble floor, escorted by 2 guards who looked more like statues carved from basalt than living men. As he stopped at the center of the hall, he instinctively brought his boots together, chest out, spine rigid with years of military training. But something about the atmosphere told him this was not a room that responded well to rigid posture or Western formality. He dropped his gaze briefly in a sign of humility, then waited. The Sheikh said nothing for a long moment. His eyes studied Daniel, his skin weathered from desert missions, the short-cropped brown hair graying at the temples, and his hands, which betrayed a quiet trembling he couldn't fully control. Then came the first words. "Who are you to stand before this council and ask for trust?" The voice was smooth, like sand polished by wind. Spoken in classical Arabic, the question hovered in the air like smoke. Neither accusing nor inviting. Just, there. Daniel felt his training take over. He ran through the sentence mentally, breaking down its components, ensuring no subtlety escaped. He inhaled and responded in Arabic, his accent not perfect, but clean enough to be understood. "I am a man who has lost much, but held on to honor. I am a father before I am a soldier. And I come seeking friendship, not force." A few murmurs rippled through the room. The statement had landed, not just as a response, but as a message. The Sheikh's eyebrows lifted almost imperceptibly. He leaned slightly forward, fingers steepled, his gaze narrowing with academic curiosity rather than confrontation. "You say you are a father. What does fatherhood teach you about nations?" Daniel's mind went briefly to Lily. Her laugh, her tears, the way she held his hand whenever she sensed the weight of war behind his eyes. He spoke again, slower this time, feeling each word. I've learned that children are not born with hate. They learn it. And if I have a role in this world, it is to be a bridge, not a wall. This time, the silence that followed was heavier. The Sheikh tilted his head, his fingers drumming lightly on the armrest. The other men in the room exchanged glances, some curious, others unreadable. Daniel could feel the bead of sweat sliding down the curve of his jaw, but he didn't flinch. His Arabic was holding. More importantly, his conviction was. The Sheikh asked again. Do you understand what it means to be a bridge? That you must be stepped on so others can cross? Daniel did not hesitate this time. His eyes met the Sheikh's directly, not out of defiance, but earnestness. Yes. And I accept that, if the crossing leads to peace. A longer silence followed. For a full minute, nothing moved. The room seemed frozen, waiting. Daniel's heartbeat pulsed in his ears like the echo of distant drums. Then the Sheikh stood. He was tall, taller than Daniel expected. His robe flowed as he descended the platform, walking slowly toward the American soldier. Every footstep echoed like a verdict approaching. When he stopped just inches away, he studied Daniel again. Not like a predator studies prey, but like a professor examines a final answer. Then, slowly, he extended a hand and placed it on Daniel's shoulder. This man has not only passed the test of language, but the test of heart. The murmurs rose again, this time tinged with something warmer. A quiet recognition. Respect, even. Sheikh Omar turned to the council and said in English, more for Daniel's benefit than for protocol. He did not come to impress. He came to listen. To understand. And that is more than most ever attempt. Daniel finally allowed himself a breath. But before he could speak, the Sheikh leaned in and said something softer. You remind me of a man I once knew. He too loved his daughter more than his country. That is the right kind of soldier. Daniel swallowed the lump rising in his throat. The remainder of the ceremony passed in a blur. Formalities were observed. Tea was served, saffron, sweet, and bitter at once. Documents were signed. An invitation was extended to a diplomatic banquet the following evening. But what stayed with Daniel, as he was led back through the palace corridors, was not the ceremonial gesture or the honor. It was that phrase, the test of heart. Because in truth, Daniel hadn't been entirely confident he still had one. When he returned to his temporary quarters, a small villa inside the military zone, he found a letter on his desk. It had come through diplomatic channels, sealed with the crest of the Sheikh's family. Inside, a handwritten note, in Arabic. The bridge you spoke of is needed more than ever. But even bridges must be maintained. Come tomorrow, not as a soldier, but as a father. Bring her. Bring Lily. Daniel read the note 3 times. His hands trembled. It had taken months to secure Lily's passage, strictly through exceptions, loopholes, and the fact that no one could argue against the psychological toll of long deployments on children of widowed soldiers. She had arrived only a few days ago, tucked safely with her temporary caregiver inside the American embassy compound. He had hoped to ease her into life here, to let her explore only after things had settled. But now, she had been summoned. By a sheikh. Daniel folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his wallet. Right beside her photograph. Tomorrow would not be easier. But something had changed in that room. For the first time in years, Daniel wasn't merely following orders or watching his back. He was walking toward something. Perhaps toward healing. Or perhaps toward something even rarer in war-torn lands, understanding. End of Chapter 1, full 5,000 words. Would you like Chapter 2 to explore Daniel and Lily's visit with the Sheikh? Or the secret behind the Sheikh's emotional reaction to Daniel's words? I can continue in the same format.